The desert had a way of remembering things long after people tried to forget. Footprints vanished with the wind, campfires collapsed into ash, names faded from stones, but the land itself never forgot. It remembered grief. It remembered laughter. And on that late afternoon, when the sun bled low and copper-red across the plains, it remembered a joke that had meant to come true. Ethan Cole had ridden alone for so many years that silence felt like a second skin. The creak of his saddle, the slow rhythm of his horse's breath, the whisper of dry grass bending under the wind, those were the only voices that kept him company now. He was a man carved thin by time and loss, his face lined not just by age, but by the kind of sorrow that settles in the bones and never quite leaves. People in the nearby settlements knew his name, though few dared speak it to his face. Some said he'd once been a deadly gunman. Others said he'd loved too deeply and paid the price. Most just said he was a cowboy who minded his own business and expected the same in return. What they didn't know was that Ethan Cole had stopped believing in anything resembling fate. That belief had died years ago, buried beneath a wooden cross no one visited anymore. He hadn't planned on crossing Apache land that day. The trail he'd intended to follow had washed out after a sudden storm, forcing him east, toward territory most white men avoided. Not because the Apache were cruel, stories exaggerated that, but because misunderstandings had a way of turning deadly when fear did the talking. Ethan wasn't afraid. He was just tired. The first sign he wasn't alone came as laughter. It wasn't mocking or sharp. It was light, almost musical, rising briefly above the wind before disappearing again. Ethan slowed his horse, hand drifting near his holster out of instinct rather than intent. He scanned the rocks, the scattered mesquite trees, the low ridges that could hide a dozen eyes. Then he saw her. She stood on a rock overlooking a shallow ravine, sunlight catching in her dark hair, which was braided with strips of faded red cloth. Her posture was relaxed, confident, as though she had nothing to fear from a lone cowboy armed and wary. She wore a simple buckskin dress, worn but clean, and around her neck hung a leather cord, empty, as though something had once been there and was now missing. "You ride like someone who's lost," she called out in accented English, her voice carrying easily. Ethan didn't answer right away. He studied her face instead. She was young, but not in the careless way of a girl. There was sharp intelligence in her eyes, humor there too, and something deeper, something that suggested she'd seen pain and survived it. Or like someone who doesn't care where he's going, she added, smiling faintly. "That's usually when a man's most dangerous," Ethan replied. She laughed again, softer this time. "Then you are not dangerous at all." That caught him off guard. He swung down from his horse slowly, deliberately showing he meant no harm. "You shouldn't talk to strangers," he said. She tilted her head. "You shouldn't ride through Apache land without knowing who watches you." "Fair enough." They stood there for a long moment, the desert holding its breath between them. Finally, she climbed down from the rock and approached, stopping a few paces away. Up close, Ethan noticed a small cut on her palm, fresh and still pink. "You're hurt," he said. "Only a little." She glanced at her hand, then closed her fingers around it. "I lost something important." He raised an eyebrow. "People usually lose a lot more than that out here." Her smile turned mischievous. "It was a ring, silver, old. My mother's." Ethan nodded once. "I'm sorry." She studied him again, as if weighing something in her mind. Then, with a sudden spark of boldness, she said, "If you find it, I'll be yours." He almost laughed, but something in her tone stopped him. "That's supposed to be a joke?" he asked. She shrugged. "Maybe." Ethan shook his head. "You don't joke about things like that." Her eyes darkened, not offended, just thoughtful. "Why not?" "Because some men might take you seriously." She smiled wider. "And would you?" "No," he said immediately. "I don't take promises that can't be kept." She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell sage on her skin, feel the warmth of her presence cutting through his long-held isolation. "You don't believe in finding lost things?" I believe most things that matter don't come back once they're gone." For a moment, the playful energy between them shifted. Something heavier settled in its place. "Then you should ride on," she said softly, "because I'm not going anywhere until I find that ring." Ethan hesitated. He didn't know why he stayed. Maybe it was guilt, maybe curiosity, or maybe it was the faint, dangerous hope that flickered to life. Against his will. They searched as the sun sank lower. She retraced her steps along the ravine, explaining she'd been gathering herbs when the ring slipped from her finger. Ethan scanned the ground carefully, dismounting, kneeling, turning stones with patient hands. Minutes stretched into an hour. "You don't have to help," she said eventually. "I know. Then why are you—" Ethan didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quieter. "Because I've lost things too." She didn't push him further. When the ring finally caught the light, it was almost invisible, half buried in sand near a thorn bush. Ethan froze, heart pounding like he'd uncovered something sacred. He picked it up slowly, brushing away dirt to reveal etched symbols worn smooth by time. He turned to her. Her expression changed the instant she saw it. Shock, relief, and something close to fear. "You found it," she whispered. Ethan crossed the distance between them and placed the ring in her open palm. Their fingers touched. Electricity sparked, sharp and undeniable. "There," he said. "Joke's over." She stared at the ring as if it had betrayed her. Then she looked up at him, eyes wide, voice barely steady. "I didn't think you would—" "Neither did I." Silence fell again, but this time it was heavy, charged with unspoken consequences. "You don't belong to me," Ethan said firmly. "You never did." She swallowed. "In my people's ways, words matter. Even jokes." "That may be," he replied, "but I won't be the man who claims something he didn't earn." Her gaze softened, something like respect blooming there. "Then perhaps you earned something else. What's that?" "A choice." The sun dipped below the horizon, shadows, stretching long and deep around them. Ethan felt the desert shift beneath his feet, not physically, but in a way that unsettled him far more. He'd found the ring. What he hadn't found yet was a way to walk away. The night came down fast in the desert the way it always did, like a curtain pulled without warning. One moment the land still glowed with dying embers of sunlight, and the next it was swallowed by cool blues and deep shadows. Stars pierced the sky one by one, sharp and countless, watching silently as two lives stood at the edge of something neither had planned. Ethan should have mounted his horse and left. He knew that. Every instinct shaped by years of survival told him to ride hard, put miles between himself and Apache land before darkness invited misunderstandings. Yet his boots remained rooted to the sand, as if the earth itself had decided he was not done here. The woman closed her fingers around the ring, pressing it to her chest. For a long time she said nothing. The playful confidence she'd worn earlier was gone, replaced by something raw and unguarded. "My name is Naya," she said finally, "daughter of Dakota of the Red Cliff people." Ethan inclined his head. "Ethan Cole." She studied his face as if committing it to memory. "You could have kept the ring, sold it, lied and said you never found it. I'm not that kind of man." Her lips curved, but there was sadness in the smile. "Most men say that." "I don't say much," he replied. "I just do what I can live with." That answer seemed to reach her more deeply than any charm ever could. She gestured toward the ravine. "You should not camp alone tonight. Wolves have been restless since the storm." "I've slept worse places," Ethan said. "I don't doubt that," she replied. "But my people are camped nearby. Come, you will be safer." The offer carried risk for both of them. Ethan knew it. Walking into an Apache camp uninvited could end badly. But turning her down felt wrong, as if fate, something he claimed not to believe in, was daring him to keep lying to himself. He nodded once. All right. They walked side by side through the darkening land. Naya moved with ease, every step sure, while Ethan followed her lead, senses sharp. Fires appeared in the distance, low and controlled, smoke rising straight into the still air. Voices murmured, children laughed softly, and somewhere a drum beat slow and steady like a heartbeat. Conversation faltered as they approached the camp. Eyes turned toward Ethan, curious, cautious, some openly hostile. Naya lifted her chin, her posture unmistakably proud. "He helped me," she said clearly. "He found my mother's ring." That stirred something among them. Whispers passed. An older man stepped forward, his hair streaked with silver, his gaze sharp as flint. Naya met his eyes. "Father," she said. Dakota looked at Ethan for a long, heavy moment. Then he extended his hand, palm open. Ethan mirrored the gesture, showing respect. "You returned what was not yours," Dakota said. "That speaks." "I didn't do it for praise," Ethan replied. Dakota nodded. "Good. Praise is thin. Honor is not." Ethan was given a place near the fire, food he hadn't realized how badly he needed, and a blanket thick enough to fight off the night chill. Still, sleep didn't come easily. He could feel Naya's presence even when she wasn't near, like a pull beneath the surface of his thoughts. Later, when the camp grew quiet, she joined him at the edge of the firelight. "You should leave at first light," she said softly. "I know, but—" She hesitated. "I am glad you stayed." He looked at her then, really looked. The fire painted her features gold and shadow, her eyes reflecting both strength and vulnerability. "That joke you made," he said slowly. "You didn't expect it to come true, no." Her voice trembled just slightly. "It was meant to make the day lighter. I didn't think the land would listen." Ethan exhaled. "The land listens more than people do." They shared a quiet smile, fragile as glass. Morning brought tension. Before Ethan could leave, riders appeared on the horizon. White men, armed, moving fast. Panic rippled through the camp. These weren't traders or travelers. They were bounty hunters, drawn by rumors of Apache movement and the promise of blood money. Ethan recognized the leader instantly. Caleb Moore, a man Ethan had crossed years ago, a man who didn't forget or forgive. Moore's eyes locked on Ethan, a cruel grin spreading across his face. "Well, I'll be damned," he drawled. "Didn't think I'd find you hiding with savages." Guns were raised, children were rushed back. Dakota stepped forward, calm but ready. Ethan felt the past surge back like a storm tide. If violence broke out, people would die, innocent people. He stepped ahead of everyone. "This is B. Between me and him," Ethan said loudly. "Let the others go." Naya's breath caught. "Ethan, no." Moore laughed. "Always the hero, fine by me." The standoff that followed felt endless. Dust swirled, hands twitched. One wrong move would shatter everything. Then Naya did something no one expected. She walked to Ethan's side and took his hand. Gasps echoed. Moore sneered. "Looks like you found yourself a pretty prize." Ethan squeezed her fingers gently, grounding himself. "She's not a prize. She's my future," Naya said, her voice strong despite the fear blazing in her eyes. "And you will leave this land." Moore's smile vanished. He spat into the dust. Outnumbered and denied the easy bloodshed he wanted, he backed off, but not before fixing Ethan with a promise-filled glare. "This isn't over." When the riders disappeared, the camp released a breath it didn't know it was holding. Naya turned to Ethan, tears finally breaking free. "You could have died." "So could you," he said. Dakota approached, eyes heavy with understanding. "You have brought danger, and you have faced it. That balances." Ethan knew what came next before the words were spoken. "You belong to different worlds," Dakota continued. "But worlds can touch." Ethan looked at Naya, I won't cage you with promises I can't keep. She smiled through her tears. You already kept one. The ring glinted in the morning sun as she slid it back onto her finger, not as a claim, not as a joke, but as a reminder of choice. Ethan mounted his horse at the edge of the camp, leaving hurt more than he expected. Naya stood watching, tall and unbroken. I'll come back, he said quietly. If you'll have me. She nodded. NCE. Find your way. The land will guide you. As he rode away, Ethan realized something had changed forever. He hadn't just found a lost ring. He'd found a reason to believe that some things, against all odds, were meant to be found.